Hey there, cinephiles. Today I wanted to talk about Escape from Tomorrow and its wasted potential, a movie I'm sure many of you totally remember. This cult classic wannabe came out 10 years ago and hasn't quite had the lasting impact I thought it would when I first stumbled upon the trailer. But now having seen the movie, I completely understand why no one talks about it. Escape from Tomorrow follows a dad and his family on vacation at Disney, and certain things transpire as he begins to lose his mind. The big draw of this movie was that it was actually filmed in Disney World and Disneyland without permission from the mouse itself, which I was a sucker for that fact, and I bought a DVD so I could finally watch it. Safe to say, I was extremely disappointed with the end product. But before I get into the film itself, I wanted to get into the making of it. The inception of the idea came to writer-director Randy Moore after visiting the parks as an adult and seeing them through his wife's eyes. Moore went to Disney World all the time as a child. However, his wife never went until their family trip. She had a terrible time, and Moore started to acknowledge her point of view that lacked the nostalgia that he had. And the way that this film goes about adapting the essence of horror in a family vacation would be incredibly interesting if it weren't so scattershot and wanting to accomplish too many things. Once the idea came to him, he had to plan for it. In the months of pre-production, Moore would go scouting in Disney in 2010 with his kids. He felt it was too creepy if he were to go alone, so in between him bringing his kids onto rides, he'd also be checking out different locations to place the camera for shots. In fact, some of the test footage he shot actually made it into the final product. Also in 2010, an adamant Roy Abersam accepted the lead role as Jim, a so-called everyday man who was a father and husband on vacation with his family at the parks. He accepted the role happily, as he himself stated the difficulty of getting roles in Hollywood, let alone a lead role that would actually pay. Back when Roy read the script prior to filming, he had believed it to be a Ben Stiller-like comedy. He quickly learned that it was not that type of film at all, although Randy Moore would describe it more as a macabre comedy. Once the filming began, they started in Orlando's Disney World. They shot there for 11 days, then they moved production to Anaheim for Disneyland, where they shot the rest of the film for 2 weeks. Then when they needed some additional footage, they waited till the spring once the Christmas decorations went down. As I'm sure you're all thinking, filming on Disney property must have had some major issues arise. And well, just like any film set, of course there were problems, but not as often or the ones you might be thinking. There was one time they almost got caught secretly filming. Towards the end of production, they had to get a shot in which the actors were coming in and out of the turnstile. A security guard noticed that the family kept being filmed by a few people who were constantly following them around. The security guard asked the lead if he was famous. Luckily for them, Elena Schuber, who plays Jim's wife in the movie, was quick on her feet and convinced the guard that they were fine and thought it was funny how others thought the family was famous. The other main issue that came from filming in the parks was not known until they were in post. From the footage that came from the Orlando portion, a huge splotch was on every frame. Apparently some tree sap got onto the sensor of the camera and they had to send the footage to South Korea to fix it. What I found didn't really explain how they did it other than the digital god smiled upon them. Once the film was finally assembled, Escape from Tomorrow premiered at Sundance in 2013. For those that don't know, Sundance is one of the major film festivals, and for a potential of a major lawsuit coming to this movie, it was bold to show this off on such a big stage for the first time. The reviews from its festival debut were actually positive, however they all brought up the point of how Disney's legal team might try its hardest to bury it. But here comes the strangest part of this film's surrealist saga. Disney didn't take any legal action. They had every right to, as Escape from Tomorrow is littered with IP and iconography from multiple parks from the House of Mouse. But the reason they didn't sue is actually quite simple. They feared that a legal battle would cause the film to instantly enter the cult classic stratosphere, as it would bring so much publicity to what is ultimately a small film. They believe that the best way to handle this situation and allow for Escape from Tomorrow's legacy to be short-lived is to simply ignore it, which actually might have been the smartest move. It's 10 years later, and who even talks about this anymore? Plus, Moore has estimated that he has paid somewhere between $15,000 to $20,000 in passes for his cast and crew to be able to enter the parks, let alone the additional cost of food, as they ate in the parks exclusively just because it was easier. Definitely a hefty price to pay for secretly filming in a theme park. After Sundance and no legal battle with Disney, a distributor for Moore's directorial debut had finally been found: PDA. The same company that brought Exit Through the Gift Shop to the world, a documentary that included Banksy and another artist who loved them so much that he himself became an artist. It kind of has an anti-Ratatouille message, which is funny to see. But anyways, Escape from Tomorrow was set to come out in theaters in October of 2013. While also being a day-and-date release to video on demand as well. Since then, Randy Moore has yet to release another film. Now, why would this be the case? He had so many people in his corner, and he had accomplished something that had never been done to this degree and hasn't since. The only answer I could find was because the novelty wore off. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, that is all Escape from Tomorrow had going for it. The novelty of secretly shooting at the happiest place on earth but making it dark and surreal, to subvert and pervert the idea of a family vacation and make it a horror movie. It is not at all a good movie. During the opening credits, we see people riding what seems to be Thunder Mountain. On the last hill, we see a decapitation and some quick shots of the park, followed by the title card. Then we see Jim out on the balcony of his family's hotel room. He's on the phone with his boss and he gets fired. Now, surprise, surprise, he doesn't tell his family and he just bottles it up as he believed it would be best not to ruin the final day of their vacation. And already with bad news to start the day, his son ends up locking him out on the balcony, the beginning of Elliot's bad behavior. The family makes their way to the park and two French teenagers come on board the monorail. Jim starts staring at the girls, and of course like father like son, so does Elliot. The family starts to go on rides and well, Jim tries to get some action from his wife Emily, to which she says no to. He then gets upset because he's basically ogling every living woman around, so he wants to satisfy his thirst while his kids are right in front of him. After Jim being pouty, the family gets on It's a Small World and he starts seeing some weird stuff. The faces of the dolls start to look demonic, his son's eyes turn black, and then he has this weird dream that his family is telling him that they hate him while still on the ride. They get off the rides and lo and behold, the French teens are back. Jim drags Elliot along to follow these girls around the park for a bit, while also ignoring his wife's calls. Fast forwarding a bit, Jim's daughter Sarah gets hurt and they visit the park's nurse. Jim is actively checking out the nurse in front of his daughter, and at the end, the nurse warns them about the cat flu. And then she just cries after. Just one of the many weird choices. Soon after, Jim meets this woman who he cheats with while his daughter is literally in the other room. The family then meet at the pool and once again, the French girls are there. Then the family go to Epcot and tensions are high. More weird and pervy stuff happen, the family has a fight, Jim sees the French girls again and weird visions happen. Then one of the French girls spits in Jim's face after she tried to get him to come with them. He loses Sarah, then he gets tased but likes it, and then an intermission an hour into the movie. And sadly, there's still 30 minutes left to this. Jim wakes up in some lab and he becomes the Epcot ball. Then he finds out the scientist is a robot after beheading him. Jim then leaves Epcot to find his daughter in the hotel suite of the woman he cheated with. Also, they find out she's a witch who killed a kid and she got sad about her necklace breaking. Then they finally return to their hotel room, and just when you think it's safe, Jim had cat flu this whole time. He was just asymptomatic and has died from it overnight in a scene that is just so disturbingly stupid. The Mickey Mouse cleanup crew come and dispose of the body, but oh look, a duplicate of Jim with a different wife and daughter show up to check into the hotel. Oh my god. The final shot of the film being of those two French teens as fairies with the end appearing on screen is so fitting for how pervy, fake, shocking, and stupid this movie is. So much happens just to get a reaction out of the audience, but isn't done well and actually is just offensively bad. To take the idea of showing the dark side of family vacations but to fail to such a major degree is actually mind-blowing to me. I understand all of the limitations and more being a first-time filmmaker, but wow, the amount of wrong decisions is absurd. I can understand someone wanting to be provocative, but to do it without any true meaning apart from the basic surface-level critiques of a company is just a wasted opportunity. The novelty must have been so intoxicating so many years ago in Sundance for paid critics to have given this positive reviews. It may have been the personal anticipation and expectations that have let me down, but for this to be as soulless and shallow as the corporation it's critiquing is crazy. Overall, Escape from Tomorrow is just a film full of cliches and shock factor just for shocks and giggles. Anytime it brings up something potentially interesting and new, it fumbles it so hard that it's not even laughably bad. The guerrilla filmmaking they underwent to produce a feature is so impressive, but this is a can of worms that is much more appreciated without having seen the end product. And at the end of the day, if you care more about your gimmick than the quality of your film, that is why you will be forgotten. And this is why Escape from Tomorrow is a failed experiment. It just really sucks because I stumbled upon this trailer as a teen and it lay dormant as a memory of mine for years. It was a couple of years ago when I accidentally stumbled upon it once again, and just recently I bought it and saw it to fulfill the want and need to finally experience this movie. Unfortunately, it just goes to show you gotta be careful what you wish for. But alright, those are my thoughts on Escape from Tomorrow. Be sure to let me know what you think about it down in the comments below. As always, thank you guys for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Be sure to follow us on our socials and let us know what other film you'd like for us to deep dive into next. Stay tuned for more Yeti Films content, and I'll catch you later.